Ever since we got that very first leaked teaser for Godzilla vs. Kong where it showed the two monsters facing off head to head, both standing on a human vessel, fans and viewers question how the hell did this happen? And now that we finally got to see the entire movie, specifically this segment where Kong was chained to the ship and carried thousands of miles across the ocean, fans and viewers are still asking, how the hell did this happen? All jokes aside, one of the major story gaps in Godzilla vs. Kong was how Kong went from scratching his ass in the biodome to somehow being chained to a ship. Well, the movie allowed our imaginations to answer this question. But in the Godzilla vs. Kong official novelization, the explanation as to how Kong was placed on the ship has finally been revealed. And that's the topic for this video. Don't forget to give us a follow over on Instagram at DangervilleYouTube if you haven't already, and let's get to it. With the Godzilla vs. Kong book, many of those questions you had about the movie are answered. About halfway through the novel, we got our answer as to how humans got the giant ape titan on the cargo ship we see him chained to. We find ourselves on Skull Island with Nathan Lind and a character not seen in the movie called Araya, the head engineer on the site at Skull Island, more specifically the biodome that contained Kong from the harsh storms on the island. The conversation the two have reminds us of how Kong was nearly taken down from napalm back in the 1970s, but also that the flames alone were not the cause of this. To allow you all to really have it all set in, I will read this segment from the book now, so sit back and allow your minds to let it all soak in. When speaking to Nathan, the head engineer says, back in 1973, a lieutenant colonel named Packard tried to take Kong down with napalm. He almost succeeded. Of course, Kong was still relatively young then, about a third of the size he is now. What dropped him wasn't the fire, but the fact that the napalm sucked up all the oxygen from the immediate atmosphere. Kong needs a lot of oxygen to function. His lungs are bigger in proportion to his size than ours are. But that doesn't matter if there isn't anything to put in them, right? But what Packard didn't realize, if he even understood what happened, was that it also takes time for the oxygen reserve in Kong's blood to completely deplete, especially if he's active and angry. Because there is also a lot of blood. You ever hyperventilate before diving underwater? Yes, Nathan said. My brother and I used to see who could stay under longer. Right, you enrich your blood with oxygen before holding your breath. When Kong is active, his blood is always enriched. I assume you didn't napalm him to get him into the enclosure, Nathan says. Araya replies, no, we sequenced his DNA and we built models on how to subdue him with an odorless chemical that is both a gas and a water soluble. It bonds with his blood like oxygen does, but it isn't oxygen. That's combined with a general soporific to keep him down after his oxygen levels return to normal. We introduced it when he was already naturally asleep. The first 3 times we tried it, it failed anyway. No one was killed, but it was close. The 4th time we got the dosage right. Then we used choppers to move him into the biodome and sealed it up while he was still snoozing. So we've done this before, we've got this. So with all that information about how oxygen levels affect Kong drastically, we finally know what the weird green goo was that we saw in the harness around Kong's neck. On top of that, we got more of a look at how mankind has been studying Kong and how they know more about him than any other Titan. After decades of super close study, it makes sense that they would have had him figured out by then. Plus, I think it's a nice Easter egg to call back to the events of Skull Island, stomping a giant monster foot down on people who thought napalm alone was enough to take Kong down. Turns out the blast and flames had little effect at all, and that he passed out due to the oxygen being completely zapped from all around him. So now we know how Kong was able to be sedated and knocked out long enough to be transported, but how did they manage to physically move him onto the ship? Let's get back to the book to learn more. We find ourselves with Eileen and Gia just as Kong is passing out due to the Kong sleepy juice. We are in Eileen's mind as the massive mission begins. Here, I'll start reading it now. When they doused Kong with the gas, he woke briefly, feebly pawing at his face before succumbing. Tech swarmed over Kong as if he were Gulliver, and they Lilliputians, building a harness around him for the helicopters to fasten to. Then they opened the biodome with shaped charges, and the rain came in, pounding the last remaining fragment of the Skull Island ecosystem mercilessly, lashing it with lightning, tearing limbs from trees. So turns out Kong was airlifted the same way that we've seen him being carried the final distance to the Antarctic Hollow Earth entrance. From the biodome, they quickly took him to the nearby cargo ship, which is revealed to be capable of carrying 100,000 tons of Titan. This gives us the first bit of clues regarding how much Kong weighs now at his full-grown size. For some reason, it's never really officially been revealed for Godzilla vs. Kong, although Godzilla's has. Regardless, Kong is still at least 60,000 tons less than Godzilla here if this is accurate, which is pretty remarkable. So now we know how mankind sedated, transported, and how the cargo ship was able to hold him in the first place. And yes, there are ships in our real world that can actually carry that much weight. The last little question some of you may still have is how the chains holding Kong in place were strong enough to actually contain him, and how his thrashing did not completely destroy the ship like every other man-made object a Titan comes in contact with. Turns out the chain links were larger than a truck, and that they were attached to winches which took a lot of the strain off of the ship itself, resulting in a few scares, but the ship itself was never really fully damaged here. Well, until the G-Man showed up. So that answers how Kong was able to be placed on this ship. What other questions do you want answered? It just so happens that the book may just have those answers, so feel free to comment down below for us to look for another topic waiting to be explained. Remember to stomp that subscribe button and share this video around if you want to help support the channel. We really do appreciate it, and I really thank you all so much for continuing to support us. As always, this has been Jacob, and I will see you in the next one.